once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. So as the Auburn fan base kind of navigates through this dead period between National Signing Day and spring football, a lot of thoughts cross their mind. For one, no one in their right minds would have guessed that the morning after Auburn beats Mississippi State in the finale of the 2020 season, that Gus Malzahn would have been fired. As a matter of fact, I was actually asleep at the time, and one of my colleagues here on the YouTube channel, guy that really helps me out with a lot of content, he sends me a text saying that Gus Malzahn was fired. And I was thinking to myself, man, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, there's no way possible. No way, no way. And excuse the hoarseness of my voice, I'm just getting over a cold, but I still want to give you guys some content. But I thought about it. I was like, man, Gus Malzahn fired after winning his last game. It's not like he lost his last game by 50 points. It's not like seemingly the team was falling apart. He even did this ridiculous dance after the game. Gus Malzahn fired. Now Auburn is looking for a new coach. So for about a week and a half, speculating anywhere from Mike Leach all the way to Kevin Steele as the head coach. Now we are where we are now. Kevin Harsin, multiple 10-win seasons at Boise State, and now the head coach at Auburn. Moving on to where we are at this point. And I'm thinking to myself, realistically, in Kevin Harsin's first year, how many games do we expect him to win? Now, I do know that the Auburn fan base, from what I can gather, is a little on the traumatized side because they really don't know. They really don't know who the successor to Gus Malzahn is going to be. Gus Malzahn really didn't have any horrible recruiting classes, really didn't do anything to necessarily embarrass the program, but he did lose some games that he just honestly shouldn't have lost. I think a career saver for him would have been the 2018 season when he lost to Mississippi State and Tennessee. You know, you get wins there, and you're talking about possibly a 10-win season for Gus Malzahn. And, you know, everybody like, okay, well, you lose to Georgia, you lose to Alabama. That kind of makes sense. But Gus Malzahn just didn't show up for the games that he should have won. And that's where we're thinking that with the sensibility of Bryan Harsin, that he's not really looking at, okay, if we beat Bama, no matter what else happens, then we're okay. I think with the coaching staff that he's put together, I think with the developmental minds that he has in place, considering all the coordinators that he's hired, former Power 5 head coaches, guys that have experience in the NFL, guys that have had, you know, really good experience even at the non-Power 5 schools from a developmental standpoint. I think this is going to be a beneficiary for Bryan Harsin. Another thing that a lot of folks are not looking at is the fact that unlike most of Nick Saban's contemporaries, Bryan Harsin comes from the breed of coaches in this new era of college football that really embrace and understand the rigorous nature of the recruiting battles. And that you got to have energy. You have to have showmanship to be able to land these high-end recruits. We talk about Tracy Rocker about a month ago now, who opted out of the Auburn job to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, Tracy Rocker has been around for a while. He played for Auburn back in the 80s. He's coached, he's recruited. And at a certain point, you got to understand that recruiting becomes really, you know, a daunting task. You know, you're spending probably the majority of your time seeking out, trying to build pipelines in recruiting to where, that thing gets tiring. So why not? If you're somewhat at the twilight of your career, like Tracy Rocker is, why not take a job at the Philadelphia Eagles to where you're developing what's there? You don't got to seek out and find people. The front office does that for you. But in college football, you have to compete with other teams who have become very good at recruiting. And it turns out that most of the teams, a good majority of Auburn's competition, whether it be, SEC West, SEC East, or the potential of being in the SEC championship game, those guys have a recruiting advantage over Auburn. And most coaches probably really don't have the energy to compete with that kind of stuff. And I think about Bryan Harsin when he was at Boise State, having to lure guys out into the middle of nowhere, getting guys from Texas, getting guys from California. That's why he brought his recruiting coordinator with him, because they know the kind of work that it takes. And this is not necessarily opinion-based. This is what I see. These guys had the top-rated recruiting classes in the Mountain West all throughout his tenure, and they put themselves in a position to beat Power 5 teams. Went down to Florida State. Florida State had all the advantages, had the lead at home, had the momentum. But Bryan Harsin and his staff, I'll tell you what, that's one of the most impressive things about Bryan Harsin as a coach, is that his team was resilient. They refused to lose that game. They stayed plugged in. They didn't get intimidated. He had the posture on the sideline that, hey, we came here to win this football game. He's not biting his teeth. He's not shaking. He's not showing any high level of negative emotions to get his team off balance. They finished the game off and they beat Florida State on the road. Florida State played an excellent game for the most part, but Boise State, that was a signature win for Bryan Harsin on the road in the ACC country, on the road in Tallahassee, getting that win. Now, people can say, well, Florida State was down. No, Florida State had the talent, but Boise State continued to fight, and that just shows the resilience of the Bryan Harsin coach team. So what can we expect? Given the schedule that Auburn has coming up this year, you can expect a pretty nice little launch pad to begin the season. You got Penn State. That's going to be one of his signature games to begin with, and that is considering the talent that Auburn has coming back versus what Penn State has. I think Penn State is going to be talented, as they always are. This is going to be a big game on the road at Happy Valley in Pennsylvania. I think that's going to be a huge possible statement win, kind of similar to, if you remember, a coach that took on the job at Georgia a few years ago, Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart goes on the road, I want to say his second year, to Notre Dame, and that was the win for Kirby Smart that set the stage to his college career. And I think that's going to be a similar situation for Bryan Harsin. And I think Bryan Harsin has the mindset and probably has that game penciled in as to where, hey, we got to get this one. This will be a signature win to our program, and it will get us moving forward. Kennard Vernon Stewart for the podcast, Talking Auburn Football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.